In this video, I'm going to present some basic facts about the Somali language. Somali belongs to the Afro-Asiatic language family and the Cushitic subgroup, and is spoken in the Horn of Africa. One of its close relatives is Oromo, which is the biggest Cushitic language. Amharic is also related to Somali, but Amharic belongs to the Semitic subgroup of the Afroasiatic languages. Somali is spoken in several states. It's spoken in Somalia, Ethiopia, Kenya, and in Djibouti. Before Somalia gained its independence, it was divided into two different colonies: the British Somaliland in the north and the Italian Somaliland in the east and the south. And since 1991, the northern part has reclaimed its independence under the name of Somaliland. But it has still not been recognized by any other states. It, however, functions as an independent country in many respects. It has its own government, currency, and so on. Somali is spoken by approximately 26 million speakers, and it's therefore approximately the 9th largest language in Africa and the 70th largest in the world. It's spoken by some 15 million in Somalia, including Somaliland, some 7 million in Ethiopia, 2.5 in Kenya, 500,000 in Djibouti, and a couple of million outside the Horn of Africa in the rest of the world. In the Nordic countries, Somali is spoken by more than 100,000 people in Sweden, which then is more than 1% of the total population. In Norway, it's almost as much, whereas in Finland and Denmark, it's just below 0.5%. The Somali-speaking areas, the Somali territory in all these states together, is an area that is larger than France and Germany together. However, despite this large area, there are relatively small dialectal differences between different parts of this large area. There is one very homogeneous dialect spoken over the larger part of the area, and it's only along the coast and along the large rivers here that more diverse dialects are found. So the most differing are these dialects. This one is not differing from the major one that much. As you can see, Mogadishu is in this area where the dialects differ more, and is not then within the scope of this major dialect. Somali is the official language of Somalia and Somaliland, as well as the regional state of Ethiopia, the Somali regional state of Ethiopia, which then more or less coincides with this colored area. It's, however, not an official language in Kenya and Djibouti. In Djibouti, French is the official language. that is mostly used. Arabic is also an official language, but not used that much. And in Kenya, English and Swahili are official languages. Since the Somali is then used in administration, education, and so on as an official language in different states, it has gained slightly different forms in these different states. So one can talk about Somali as a pluricentric language with one common standard with slight variation, like English in the US, in Britain, in Australia, and so on. And these three major varieties are then the variety of Somalia, based on the political and administrative usage that has its base in Mogadishu, Somaliland, with the base in Hargeisa, and in Ethiopia, the variety with its base in the capital Jigjiga. And just a couple of examples of the variation. The word red differs between areas, but it's not a variation that coincides exactly with these state borders. And also the different words have different geographical scope. So here we can see that Assan is mainly used in Somaliland and the north of the Ethiopian regional state, whereas Gadud is used in the larger area. For the word yellow, the division is slightly different, and for the word fish, the division is completely different. So for the vocabulary, different words have very different distribution. Somali is relatively well investigated and described. There is a rich oral literary tradition where poetry is highly valued, and the first written sources are from the late 1800s. Somali became an official language on the 1st of January 1973 and has since then become quite well standardized. So the first printed book is a grammar book describing Somali in English. And it's published in 1880 in Bombay, 181 pages. So it's a quite comprehensive work. The first dictionary appears in 1897, a Somali English dictionary, printed in London, 300 pages, also a quite big dictionary. The first page that was ever published in a Somali newspaper in Somali was published in 1957 as a page in the otherwise Italian, Italophone newspaper published in Mogadishu. But due to severe protests against the use of the Latin script instead of the Arabic script, this page was only published this once, and there was no continuation. In 1960, Somalia got its independence, and committees were established to find a solution for the writing of Somali, to find a suitable script above all. but the work did not result in any political decisions, and instead the first printed book with today's modern spelling was published in 1965 by a man called Shir Jama Ahmed, who had been in the first committee where the script was discussed. And he published both a couple of books and a journal that appeared in 6 issues. And the script that he used in his publications later became the official alphabet of Somali. When Somali then was introduced as the official language of the country in 1973. And after 3 years, the first modern completely Somali dictionary with explanations in Somali was published, and the work with writing school books continued until 1979, when all school books for all subjects up to the 12th grade of the end of secondary school was covered. There have been a number of new dictionaries published in the 2000s, and the latest and biggest dictionary was published in 2013 in Djibouti. It's a really big book. There are also 3 corpora available. And language corpora are important tools in order to investigate language nowadays. One is found at the University of Gothenburg, one is found at the Cultural Center of Hargeisa, and one is found in the Czech Republic, in Brno, in cooperation with the University of Addis Ababa and Oslo. A few words about the language from a grammatical, etc. point of view. So the writing and pronunciation is not that very complicated. The spelling is very phonetic, close to the pronunciation, but there are a few letters that needs some explanation. One is the DH combination that represents retroflex sound like the Swedish d. Then there are 4 letters that are used in the same way as in English. It's J, Sh, W, and Y. And then there are 5 sounds that are similar, very similar to some Arabic sounds. There is a Ain, there is a Ha, Q, H, and the glottal stop. In Somali, double letters are used to represent long sounds. Somali also has a stress system that is realized as a high tone. So on a stressed syllable, the pitch of the voice is higher than on the unstressed syllables. So and in the nouns, it's generally the case that masculine nouns has this high tone on the second last vowel position. So if there are short vowels, it will be the second last syllable, but if the vowel is long, it will be the first part of the long vowel. So the masculine word boy starts off with a high pitch, a high tone, which then falls to a low tone at the end of the word. So it's something like innan. And the feminine is the opposite. It starts off with a low pitch and raises up to a high at the end of the word. Innan, innan, innan. And liver versus garden would be something like ber, ber, ber. Gender is also important for many grammatical categories, pronouns, verbs, but not adjectives, definite article, and so on. And a basic distinction is made between masculine forms containing a K and feminine forms containing a T. And all nouns denoting objects are then either masculine or feminine. So this citric fruit is feminine, and then the feminine demonstrative pronoun needs to be used. So this is a lemon or orange. Tani wa lin. And this is Musa, this is Sarah. Kaniwa Musa, Kaniwa Sahra. Sorry, Taniwa Sahra. But the adjective good. This is a good book. This is a good orange. The adjective doesn't inflect for gender in Somali. However, the verb in the third person singular has different forms for the masculine and the singular and the feminine. So this book is good. Is will be yahay in the masculine, and this lemon or orange is good will be tahay for is in the feminine gender. Nouns are inflected with endings to denote the definite form. So the definite article is an ending, a suffix, just like the plural ending. Also the possessive determiners are endings in Somali. So her, shu is expressed through this suffix meaning her, and also demonstratives are endings. So tan means this. And several suffixes can follow each other, then their form may change slightly. But here we have the plural, which is here o, it changes to a. We have het for her instead of teda. We have an for this instead of tan. So there are slight modifications when these suffixes are stacked after each other. Adjectives in Somali are fewer than in English, and instead nouns are often used in different ways. So a Somali girl will be expressed as a girl being a Somali. So through the use of this verb form which means being, another noun can be used to define what kind of girl it is. And Somali then is a noun. And the same is true for the next example, where badan is an adjective that helps connect the noun book and the noun interest. So it's a book of much interest in Somali. There is no genitive form in Somali. Instead, one can choose either to use a possessive ending. So this means then his book, and Ahmed, his book, then is used to express Ahmed's book. But it can also be made without really marking anything, just putting Ahmed after the word for the book. So Buga Ahmed simply means Ahmed's book. Verbs are inflected for a lot of different forms. There is person inflection, so we have first, second, and third person, singular and plural, with different forms. We have tenses, present with a, past with a, and future with an auxiliary verb. And it's basically the same meaning as the English will. It's a verb that originally meant want, but became an auxiliary in this construction in order to express the future. There's also an aspect distinction like in English, so we have something that corresponds very, very closely to sang, was singing, and used to sing. And was singing, the progressive is expressed through an additional ending a before the past tense ending a, or the present tense ending a. So is singing will be hesaya. And there is also mode. There is an indicative mode that is the ordinary forms of the verb in order to express the reality, and subjunctive forms that are used in order to talk about unreal, not real situations and actions, and an imperative. The word order in Somali is generally subject, object, verb. It's generally considered to be subject, object, verb. And statistically, that's probably the most frequent. But almost as frequent is also the word order subject, verb, object. And actually, Somali has a very free word order when it comes to noun phrases such as the subject, the object, and the adverbial. They can be moved around quite freely in a similar way that it's possible to move around words in Latin or in Russian, for example. And what really determines the word order in Somali is the information structure, the information packaging, or what is kind of emphasized in the sentence. Somali has something that is called sentence particles, and they are obligatory. Every sentence needs a sentence particle, and the sentence particle tells us what kind of sentence it is. So declarative sentences contain a marker, wa, that tells us that this is a declarative statement, and it's positive declarative statement. So in these two sentences, a means she, and ordaysa means is running. It's the progressive form. And wa is a marker that tells us that this is a declarative positive statement. There are then other markers, sentence particles. There is a ma that marks negative declarative statements. There is another ma that marks positive polar questions, yes/no questions. And there is a ha that marks negative imperatives. And the only type of sentence that lacks a marker are positive imperative sentences. And of course, most languages have a negative declarative marker, something like not in English or inte in Swedish. Quite a few languages also have a positive polar question marker, like French can use est-ce que as a kind of marker, but some languages like Russian have a specific smaller word, li. Arabic has hal, I think, and so on. So this kind of word, this kind of sentence type markers, sentence particles, occurs in many languages, but they're usually not obligatory. And what is special about Somali is that they are obligatory, and every sentence has a marker. Another interesting thing about Somali are the prepositions that are always placed before the verb. So they don't go with the noun as they do in English or Swedish. So in a sentence like I live in Gothenburg is a phrase. In belongs together with Gothenburg. Whereas in Somali, the preposition ku, that means in, doesn't go with Gothenburg. It doesn't occur together with Gothenburg. Instead, the prepositions occur together with the verb, the predicate verb of the sentence. So it's in live, and it's the preposition that is stressed in this Somali sentence is waxaan ku noolahay Göteborg. And finally, I just collected a few borrowings. Somali has really many Arabic borrowings. Most borrowed words are from Arabic. There are different claims about the frequency or the number of Arabic borrowings. I sometimes claim that 25% of the vocabulary would be borrowed from Arabic, but that's very difficult to prove. But it's a large portion of the vocabulary. On the second place, we find English borrowings. They are also very frequent, and today it's probably mostly English borrowings that enter Somali as new borrowings are introduced into Somali. And historically, many Italian words found their way into Somali, and mainly in the mid and southern part of Somalia, where the Italian colonial power had their influence. There are, of course, many European borrowings, in general, international words, and there are some Old Persian borrowings, since there was a lot of contact over the sea trade, etc., with both Persia and India. Some words found their way from different languages in India and from Persian. And of course, Swahili is spoken right next to Somalia, so especially in the south of Somalia, some Swahili vocabulary has also found its way into Somali. But often these Swahili borrowings are used mainly in the south, and other words might be used in the north. Thank you. That's all for now.